Welcome, everyone. Today we're covering Chapter 6, Cost Behavior, Cost Equations, and Cost Volume Profit Analysis, also called CVP analysis. This is one of the most practical chapters in managerial accounting because it gives us tools to understand how costs behave as activity changes. We will use these tools to answer questions like, how many units must we sell to break even? How much we need to sell to reach a target profit? How sensitive is profit to changes in sales? Or how risky is our cost structure? These are real-world questions that managers deal with constantly. Here are our learning objectives for Chapter 6. By the end of this chapter, you should be able to describe fixed and variable costs and explain the concept of relevant range. Explain the cost equation and use it to perform cost volume profit analysis and compute break-even. Compute sales required to achieve a target profit and compute margin of safety. Use the cost equation to set pricing. Explain operating leverage. And lastly, describe mixed costs and the use of the high-low method to separate mixed cost into fixed and variable components. Before we dive into cost behavior, let's connect this to a real-life example. Variable costs are not always perfectly linear in the real world. For example, production workers often become more efficient early in the day as they get warmed up, but later in the day, they may become less efficient due to fatigue. That is similar to a Major League Baseball pitcher. A pitcher may start a game strong, but over time their performance declines as they get tired. The point is, in theory, variable costs increase in a straight line with production, but in practice, costs may behave differently depending on human and operational factors. Let's begin with a quick review. Direct costs are costs that physically become part of a product or are directly associated with producing a product or performing a service. Indirect costs are necessary to produce a product but cannot be traced directly to one product. They are commonly called overhead. For example, direct materials and direct labor are direct costs. Factory rent, utilities, and supervisor salaries are indirect costs. Let's complete a quick learning activity. For each cost listed, determine whether it is direct or indirect in a factory. Pause here and work through the activity. Once you've finished, check your answers with the solutions provided in the back of Chapter 6. Now we move into the first learning objective related to fixed and variable costs. Fixed costs are costs that stay the same regardless of production volume. A good example is the salary of a production supervisor. The supervisor is paid a monthly salary that does not change if the factory produces more or less units. So total fixed costs remain constant in total, but fixed cost per unit changes based on production volume. Now answer learning activity 2. Which statement is correct regarding fixed costs? Pause here and work through the activity. Once you've finished, check your answers with the solutions provided in the back of Chapter 6. Now let's define variable costs. Variable costs change in total in direct proportion to changes in activity. A common example is hourly wages paid to assembly line workers. If production increases, more labor hours are required, so labor costs increase. The key characteristic is that variable cost per unit remains constant within a relevant range. Now answer learning activity 3. Which statement is correct regarding variable costs? Pause here and work through the activity. Once you've finished, check your answers with the solution provided in the back of Chapter 6. Now we introduce the important concept, relevant range. Fixed and variable cost behavior assumptions hold only within a relevant range of activity. If production increases beyond that range, fixed costs may increase in steps. These are called step costs. For example, one supervisor may oversee up to 20 employees. If you add more employees, you may need to hire another supervisor, causing fixed costs to jump to a higher level. Now complete learning activity 6.4. Classify each cost as fixed or variable. Pause here and work through the activity. Once you've finished, check your answers with the solutions provided in the back of Chapter 6.